Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. I hope you all are having a fantastic fall day. It is absolutely beautiful here today in Central Ohio, and it is the perfect time for making some delicious pumpkin butter. So that's what we're going to be doing today on my video. I'm going to show you how to make some delicious pumpkin butter, perfect for this time of year. To make our pumpkin butter, we are going to be using these delicious little guys. It is a pie pumpkin, so you want to make sure that when you are making it to look for the little pumpkins, and they're always labeled as pie pumpkins. That's what we're going to be using as the star of our show today. The recipe that I'm going to be demonstrating is from the Ball Fresh Preserving website, or Ball Canning. They keep changing the name of the website, but at any rate, I will leave the link to it in the description box below. Of course, if you've hung around my channel very much, you know that I like to make some Carol changes to make it just a little bit bougier, a little tastier. So I'm going to be adding my little twists to it, but you are going to start with some fresh pumpkin. Now, the best way that I have found to peel the pumpkin was to poke it with a fork, or you can use a sharp knife, poke several holes in it, and then microwave it for about 2 minutes or so. They do get very hot, so you have to be careful when you're cutting them, but you want to soften it some. They're really hard to cut just fresh like this. So poke it a little bit, stick it in the microwave for 1, 2, 3 minutes, and then you're going to cut it into chunks. We need 8 cups, which is about 3 pounds of fresh pumpkin. To that, we are going to add some apple juice. I don't know why you couldn't add apple cider. I know I'll get that question. There's no reason you couldn't use apple cider instead, but I did follow the recipe for that, and I did use apple juice instead of cider. We need some fresh ginger. That's what the recipe calls for. If you don't have fresh ginger, you could always use dried instead, and I will leave the amounts for both fresh and dried in the description box below my video with the rest of the recipe. You're also going to need some light brown sugar. If you wanted to use dark brown sugar, there's no reason you couldn't. The recipe called for light, so I used light. We need 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. The recipe calls for fresh lemon juice, not bottled. So I used fresh lemon juice. And then you need some spices. They recommend, of course, we already had the ginger, already mentioned the ginger. You could do fresh or dried ginger, whichever you prefer. And then they recommend using cinnamon and ground cloves. You could also use pumpkin pie spice. Use whatever spices that you use in your pumpkin pie. We just want to enhance the flavor of the pumpkin here. Now, to make it bougie, you'll see I did add the caviar of 2 vanilla beans, and I also added some spiced rum, some Captain Morgan. You can totally leave that out, but I did, you'll see as I demonstrate how to make it, I did add that just to kick it up just a little bit of a notch. Especially if you're going to be gifting it for the holidays, it's nice to add a little liqueur in the background. I often get asked, do I have to add the liquor? You absolutely do not, but even if you're not a drinker, liqueurs or liquors, they add a delicious flavor in the background that you can't get any other way, and most of the alcohol cooks off, so there's really not a huge concern about alcohol. Plus, we're only using 1 or 2 tablespoons for the whole batch, so the amount of alcohol that you're actually consuming is very minimal, but it adds delicious flavor. The other thing that I want to mention in this video before we get started is pumpkin butter is not approved for canning. There are no safety guidelines, tested safety guidelines for canning this, so we are going to be freezing it, which is what is recommended by Ball. If you are going to be using it quickly within 3 weeks to a month, there's no reason you have to freeze it. It does make a fairly small batch, so if you were just going to give it away, there's no reason why you would have to freeze it, but if you want to preserve it, freezing is the preferred method here. Please don't message me and ask me for guidelines for canning. I do not have any. It has not been tested. As far as safety is concerned, it is not safe for canning, so I cannot give you any directions on that. I'm going to be using these little freezer containers. These are by Ball, and I will leave a link to them in the description box below. They do give instructions on their website for freezing in their canning jars. You just want to make sure that you're leaving enough headspace when you do freeze things. It does expand, so you want to make sure their guidelines state to leave a 1/2 inch. I would leave more than that just to be on the safe side. So maybe to the bottom of the first ring, that'll give you a nice inch of headspace. But like I said, they recommend a 1/2. I would do an inch. So you can freeze in their jars if you prefer. So I'm going to bring you in close and we're going to get started. Okay guys, we are going to get started. We are going to start by adding 8 cups of our cubed fresh pumpkin. To that, we are going to add 1 cup of apple juice and 2 tablespoons of fresh minced ginger. I just minced mine with a knife. We are going to bring this to a boil over high heat. Once it starts to boil, we are going to reduce our temperature, put the lid on, and let it simmer for about 30 minutes until it's nice and soft. Okay guys, my pumpkin has simmered for about 30 minutes. It didn't take very long for it to break down, but you can tell that it's nice and soft now. I can actually literally mash it with the back of my spoon. So what the instructions call for at this point is to puree it in 2 batches in a blender, but I'm going to try to use my immersion blender so I don't have to get my big blender out. And we just want to break it down the rest of the way. Okay, my immersion blender worked very well actually. You can tell it's all nicely pureed, beautiful orange color. So now we're ready to add the rest of our ingredients. So we are going to add 2 cups of firmly packed light brown sugar. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice. You do not have to use bottled here. Technically, you can use whatever spices that you like, but Ball is recommending we use a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon and about 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves. You could use pumpkin pie spice here if you'd like, but remember we already used the fresh ginger, so we already have ginger going on in here. So we're going to give that a stir. And then we are going to partially cover it. And if you've ever made apple butter before, you know that as it starts to cook, it likes to spit and spatter. So I like to use a deep pot, a fairly deep pot, and then you want to partially cover it with a lid. We want some evaporation and concentration to happen here, and we are going to cook this on a medium-low heat for about 20 to 30 minutes. We want the pumpkin butter to start to thicken, and it should hold its shape on a spoon. Okay guys, I just want to mention, as you are cooking your pumpkin butter on the medium-low heat, you want to make sure that you're stirring it every now and then so that it's not sticking or burning on the bottom. So you can see it's been cooking for about 10 minutes here. It is starting to thicken. We have a little ways to go yet. Put the lid back on, partially covering it, and we'll let it continue to cook. Okay guys, you can see that our pumpkin butter has gotten nice and thick. You can tell when it's ready. See how it's holding its shape as I'm stirring through it? That's a good indication. You will feel some resistance when you stir it. If you put some on a spoon, you can see how it holds its shape. See how it holds its shape there? It's not oozing all over the place. So really, our pumpkin butter is now finished. However, if you've hung around my channel very much, you know that I'm bougie and I like to kick things up a notch when I can. So I am going to add the caviar from 2 vanilla beans. This is totally optional, but it's really gonna give us some extra flavor in the background, make it nice and special, especially if you're gifting this. And then I'm also going to add a couple of tablespoons of Captain Morgan spice rum. You can leave out the alcohol if you'd prefer. Again, it's just to add a little bit of something special. So I'm going to give that a stir. I'm going to cook it another 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna take it off the heat, let it cool, and then we can put it in our containers. Okay guys, how easy was that? Not too hard, right? The hardest part about this, I have to tell you, is cutting up the pumpkin. Peeling and cutting it up. I have found the easiest way to peel it is to use a vegetable peeler. Once you soften it in the microwave, you can cut it in wedges and then use a vegetable peeler to peel it. That's the best way that I have found to do it. And make sure you save your pumpkin seeds for roasting. But that is the most difficult part, is cutting up your pumpkin. If you want to cheat and you don't want to deal with cutting up a fresh pumpkin, which I do recommend, has amazing flavor. But if you wanted to cheat, you could use a can or 2 of pumpkin puree instead. So there's that option as well you can do that to make your pumpkin butter. So anyway, I just wanted to show you, if you're gonna fill your jars, like I said, they say a 1/2 inch headspace. I filled mine just to the bottom rim. I want to make sure that there's plenty of room for expansion. And then the way that they recommend preparing it for freezing is you want to go ahead and add your lid, and then you're just going to barely tighten the ring just a little bit. You're going to let it cool completely. Put it in the freezer just like this. Once it's completely frozen, then you can tighten down the ring, and you can store it in your freezer. For the freezer containers, again, I left a generous headspace because it is going to expand. But anyway, you guys, this is fantastic, so yummy. I love the addition of the vanilla bean caviar and the rum, the spiced rum. Great, great flavor in the background. Adjust your spices however you want to, whatever tastes good to you. So make sure you taste it before you pop it in the freezer. Thanks for coming along with me today, guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Take care.